In a brief but intense clash near Pokrovsk, more than a dozen armored vehicles, supply trucks, and multiple Russian infantry units were reported disabled. Ukrainian frontline footage reveals that the dense forest, ruined buildings, and partially buried shelters, once considered safe havens, are now deceptive traps. The moment a soldier moves, drones in the low sky detect the movement immediately. This story isn't about a single powerful explosion, but rather a relentless kill chain where pressure is applied first, panic follows, and then the lethal strike lands. One drone forces a target to leave cover, and often a second drone arrives before the soldier even realizes they are exposed. This is why traditional hiding is becoming ineffective. Trees may block direct sight lines, but they do not prevent tracking. Ruins can shield bodies, but cannot conceal movement patterns. Alarmingly, this tactic has expanded beyond targeting infantry. The same principles are now being applied to vehicles and specialized equipment that were once considered more secure. Consequently, the key question is no longer about who possesses heavier armor, but rather where any truly safe zone exists when the skies above are constantly surveilling. For those who value clear, factual reporting like this video, please share and subscribe to Military Force. Stay tuned, because upcoming footage will demonstrate how this drone strategy spreads rapidly along the front. Ukrainian FPV first-person view drone teams are transforming forest belts and frontline tree lines into deadly trap zones. Cover that once provided protection now reveals shape, movement, and routines. Numerous clips show Russian infantry attempting to shield themselves behind tree trunks, bushes, and crumbling walls, yet drones attack from above and behind, angles rarely monitored by human eyes. The advantage lies in timing and position. A pilot doesn't need an unobstructed view through the woods, only a brief opening above the canopy followed by a dive through a gap. This dive triggers immediate behavioral changes. Once the drone's buzz is heard, calm turns to panic, and split-second decisions determine lives. Some soldiers press tightly against tree bark, others dash deeper into the branches, but the drone's onboard camera captures them clearly, as if the trees are mere curtains. Ruins offer no better safety. Though a collapsed house can hide a body, it cannot mask movement or the subtle shifts in posture as the drone circles overhead. Several sequences show the same rapid pattern. A target spots the threat, drops low, crawls toward thicker cover, yet still gets hit when the pilot commits to the final strike. The forest thus becomes a trap, as the instinct to cling to concealment funnels troops into predictable paths that aerial hunters exploit repeatedly. One striking moment shows a soldier trying to shoot down a drone with automatic fire, but the shots miss, and the muzzle flash reveals his position instead. The drone closes in relentlessly, and the failed defense becomes a beacon, guiding the operator's final approach. What makes this pressure feel systematic is how organized it appears. Operators seem to work in coordinated zones, with one drone searching, while another waits for the perfect moment to finish the target off. There's also a suggestion of unit identity in the online footage, as videos from Ukrainian units, including those linked to the Azov Brigade, frequently showcase FPV drones as a tool to halt infantry advances in wooded areas. While this doesn't confirm all clips come from the same unit, it indicates drone hunting is a deliberate and repeatable frontline tactic, not a series of lucky strikes. The battlefield impact is straightforward. A squad unable to move through forests without being tracked loses its most effective means of closing distance and seizing the initiative. When that situation unfolds, even routine actions become perilous, where a slight misstep can be fatal, turning the simplest tasks into high-stakes maneuvers fraught with danger and uncertainty. Simple moves like shifting between foxholes, small, often hastily dug fighting positions designed to provide cover and concealment, require extreme caution to avoid enemy fire or observation, as even a minor exposure can be spotted by enemy scouts or sensors, leading to deadly consequences. Moving ammunition becomes a hazardous endeavor. Every supply transfer must be meticulously planned and executed under the cover of darkness, natural terrain features, or electronic countermeasures to avoid detection by enemy drones or surveillance teams. Rotating a watch team before dawn, which under normal circumstances is a routine and relatively safe operation, transforms into a risky procedure as the approaching light increases visibility and vulnerability, potentially exposing soldiers to sniper fire or targeted strikes. Command decisions during these tense moments face intense psychological and operational pressure, forcing leaders to constantly weigh the risks of pausing to consolidate forces against rushing forward and increasing the likelihood of being spotted or ambushed. These dangers multiply exponentially under constant, high-tech drone surveillance, which turns the battlefield into a claustrophobic arena where every sound, shadow, or movement can betray the presence of troops to an unseen enemy. Soldiers must maintain strict spacing to avoid clustering, enforce complete silence to prevent noise discipline breaches, and avoid predictable movement patterns that could be anticipated by enemy intelligence or automated tracking systems. The decisive factor in engagements shifts from sheer firepower to the ability of troops to conceal their movements and operate stealthily in a high-threat environment. This evolving reality sets the stage for highly coordinated strikes employing the sophisticated force-out, then finish tactic, where one drone acts as a persistent pressure point, corralling the target and forcing them into movement, thereby exposing their position to a second drone equipped for precise, lethal engagement. Unlike traditional brute force tactics that rely on overwhelming firepower and rapid assaults, this method involves patient, calculated manipulation of the target's movements until a moment of vulnerability is achieved. For example, a soldier's desperate attempt to shoot down an overhead drone with small arms inadvertently revealed his location through the muzzle flash, which was instantly detected by the enemy, leading to a swift and deadly follow-up strike. This tactic demands careful planning, clearly defined roles among drone operators and ground forces, precise spacing to prevent interference and ensure tactical advantage, exact timing to synchronize pressure and strike phases, and an ability to predict how targets will respond under duress. The first drone functions as a shepherd, corralling and herding the enemy into a constrained zone, while the second waits patiently as the hunter, ready to deliver a decisive blow once the target is exposed. This method fundamentally alters the dynamics of the battlefield. Troops move less frequently and only with extreme caution. Small groups often freeze in place to avoid detection. And defensive positions can collapse not through overwhelming force, but due to psychological pressure and attrition caused by constant, precise harassment. Ultimately, the force-out then finish tactic represents a scalable and adaptable process that transforms the balance of power on the battlefield through the coordinated, patient use of cutting-edge technology and psychological warfare, emphasizing control and manipulation over raw aggression and firepower, and requiring a high degree of discipline and coordination among all participants. Once this process is underway, the scope of potential targets can no longer be confined to infantry alone, as the same principles apply to any entity that conceals itself, moves, and relies on timing. This broadens the battlefield, pulling costly assets into the same vulnerable low-altitude kill zone. The critical evolution in the footage is that first-person view FPV drone pressure extends beyond infantry to include armored vehicles, self-propelled artillery, and even short-range air defense systems. When a strike drone can detect a moving target in grass or along the edge of a tree line, heavy equipment ceases to be a secure asset and instead appears as a conspicuous, slow-moving object that must either remain perfectly concealed or accept significant risk. This is why the clips resonate beyond mere highlights. Each successful strike demonstrates that specialized platforms can be brought down in the same threat environment as an individual soldier. A particularly striking moment captures a Stella 10 vehicle spotted inside a hangar, indicating that even storage and concealment sites can fail once drone reconnaissance remains persistent, continuously scanning rear areas. The key takeaway is not that the system itself is inherently weak, but that it was located, tracked, and targeted within a supposedly low-exposure zone. This capability transforms how air defense crews perceive safe periods of inactivity. Similar logic applies to armored vehicles shown in the footage. Despite being designed to withstand shrapnel and small arms fire, they still burn when relatively inexpensive drones identify vulnerabilities such as seams, roof lines, or uncovered rear sections. A self-propelled gun taking cover in a dugout survives only briefly, as once its position is revealed, its heavy mass becomes a liability that restricts movement and forces it to endure hits in place. Even support vehicles are not immune. Footage shows an armored repair and recovery vehicle struck while crossing open terrain, highlighting a broader issue where assets intended to rescue damaged armor become targets themselves. This mechanical reality also carries significant political and industrial implications, as the 2025 battlefield is increasingly characterized by drone swarms rather than solely artillery firepower. This is not merely theoretical. Ukraine has openly advocated for massive FPV drone acquisition and production, with plans reportedly targeting quantities in the millions by 2025. When a nation can sustain frontline operations with this scale of drone deployment, the cost dynamics shift dramatically. Platforms worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars face threats from systems priced closer to consumer electronics. This introduces a new escalation dynamic, where commanders might withhold expensive vehicles, not due to lack of capability, but because exposure time becomes the primary vulnerability, with the low-altitude environment punishing any hesitation. Concealment strategies are also transformed, as hiding is no longer just about visual camouflage, but about disrupting patterns that drones and their operators learn through repeated surveillance passes. While structures like hangars, dugouts, or tree belts can still provide some protection, their effectiveness depends on preventing initial detection, since once a location is fixed, targeting becomes a matter of timing rather than chance. This is why the footage serves as a stark warning. High-value assets do not guarantee immunity, and specialization can make platforms easier to identify, track, and prioritize. Once these targets are drawn into low-altitude engagements, strike tactics evolve further, as FPV drone teams rarely operate alone when breaching hardened cover and neutralizing costly elements in the operational chain.
Ukraine's strike strategy employs an innovative and highly effective two-layer drone approach, combining the unique capabilities of first-person view FPV drones with specialized grenade-dropping drones to maximize battlefield impact. The first layer consists of agile FPV drones that act as scouts, flying close to the enemy to detect, disrupt, and pin down targets with remarkable precision. These drones skillfully evade enemy countermeasures, including electronic jamming and anti-drone weaponry, maneuvering through complex terrain such as dense urban areas, forested zones, and rugged landscapes. Their ability to mark exact locations of enemy assets, including those cleverly concealed within dugouts, collapsed buildings, or other fortified hiding spots, turns what were once safe shelters into deadly traps. By hovering stealthily and transmitting real-time visual and positional data, these FPV drones enable Ukrainian forces to identify vulnerabilities in enemy defenses that would otherwise be impossible to spot. The second layer involves grenade-dropping drones that operate in close coordination with their scouting counterparts. These drones hover near the targeted area and deliver precise explosive payloads, dropping grenades into narrow openings such as ventilation shafts, windows, or damaged sections of armored vehicles. This method ensures accuracy and effectiveness in neutralizing targets, especially where a rapid dive bombing maneuver would be too risky or imprecise. A prime example of this tactic's success can be seen in the rapid exposure and destruction of a self-propelled gun hidden within a dugout. The FPV drone's reconnaissance reveals the position, while the grenade-dropping drone delivers a fatal strike, demonstrating how traditional notions of shelter and protection now hinge on the timing and coordination of drone operations, rather than the mere physical strength of walls or armor. This dual drone tactic forces defenders into a complex dilemma: to remain in place and risk repeated coordinated strikes, or to relocate and face the dangers of ambush or further exposure. The strategy scales fluidly from targeting isolated vehicles to disrupting entire mechanized formations, effectively turning well-organized Russian assaults into chaotic, disjointed movements. Under relentless drone pressure, vehicle columns lose cohesion, forcing retreating forces into scattered formations that are vulnerable to mines, artillery, and follow-up drone attacks. Isolated vehicles caught during withdrawal become easy prey, and the risk to recovery units tasked with salvaging damaged equipment increases significantly, further compounding enemy logistical challenges. This erosion of control on the battlefield allows Ukrainian defenders to systematically pick off enemy targets one by one. Rapid deployment and relatively low production cost compared to the replacement of heavy armored vehicles. The increasing importance of aerial reconnaissance is underscored by the emergence of active FPV drone teams dedicated to hunting and neutralizing Russian UAVs, marking a new and dynamic phase in drone warfare. These Ukrainian FPV pilots employ aggressive tactics,
often ramming enemy quadcopters to disable them swiftly, rather than engaging in prolonged aerial duels. This emphasis on speed, aggression, and surprise is particularly vital given the difficult conditions posed by strong winds, electronic countermeasures, and the ever-present threat of anti-drone systems, ensuring that Ukraine maintains a critical edge in the rapidly evolving arena of unmanned combat aerial vehicles. A direct collision between drones can instantly snap propellers, misalign cameras, sever control links, and cause immediate loss of situational awareness, which is why crews often prefer fast, impactful strikes over slow, cautious approaches that increase vulnerability. Some teams meticulously coordinate these collisions with troop movements to temporarily clear contested airspace, allowing infantry squads to cross exposed ground undetected and avoid being targeted by enemy fire. Over time, regular drone-on-drone engagements have evolved from chance encounters into deliberate, highly coordinated operations, significantly raising battlefield complexity and requiring new tactical doctrines. Many Russian UAVs don't just passively capture footage, they actively transmit coordinates in real time, adjust artillery fire to improve accuracy, and monitor critical supply routes to disrupt enemy logistics. As long as these aerial eyes operate, trenches can be meticulously mapped, vehicle movements tracked with precision, and resupply efforts targeted effectively, severely hindering frontline sustainability. The destruction of enemy UAVs disrupts their sensor-to-shooter links, reduces the threat from loitering strike drones waiting to ambush ground units, and directly protects troops by lowering the risk of sudden, devastating drone strikes. This defensive role transforms interceptions into essential protective maneuvers, underscoring the intense industrial competition behind the lines as both sides race to outproduce and outdeploy drone fleets. Both Ukraine and Russia have massively scaled up drone production, with Ukraine planning to manufacture millions of units annually and Russia claiming comparable output, making drones indispensable central assets in this prolonged conflict. These high production levels sustain continuous interception efforts, allowing armies to dedicate specific drones to defense without depleting their offensive reserves, thereby maintaining operational flexibility. Design priorities clearly reflect this dual role. Interceptors focus on speed, maneuverability, and rapid response capabilities, while strike drones emphasize payload capacity, video stability for targeting, and endurance. A nation that can quickly replace lost drones maintains relentless pressure on the enemy and saturates low airspace with overwhelming numbers, denying adversaries freedom of movement. Battlefield control thus depends heavily on who keeps more aerial units operational and eliminates opponent drones faster, a contest often decided within minutes of engagement. Losing reconnaissance drones means forfeiting early warning capabilities that are crucial for troop dispersal, concealment, and camouflage. Losing attack drones eliminates cheap, precise strike options, more resource-intensive weapon systems. Consequently, air combat directly influences ground tactics and forces commanders to allocate resources toward drone defense, potentially thinning offensive strength during critical attacks or maneuvers. As drone versus drone hunting becomes routine, controlling low airspace increasingly sets the battlefield tempo, with victory now relying more on cheap, agile first-person view (FPV) drones rather than sheer troop numbers or armored vehicles. In dense forests, urban ruins, and fortified dugouts transformed into kill zones, defense shifts from merely hiding to actively disrupting enemy detect-to-strike sequences. When mechanized advances repeatedly swerve to avoid drone-detected traps, trigger mines, or retreat under aerial surveillance, dominance in the drone domain clearly shapes clear, decisive outcomes that determine the flow of battle and the survivability of forces on the ground. Failure in combat often stems from control issues, predictable movements, and poor timing, rather than just lack of firepower. When UAVs are intercepted mid-air, warfare shifts from brute force to detection and disabling opponents first, favoring skilled operators, rapid unit replacement, and steady supplies. Commanders must choose between preserving armored units or risking infantry as lines weaken. Adaptation is vital. Russia will protect reconnaissance and drone operations, while Ukraine seeks to maintain supply lines and contest low-altitude airspace. The key question remains which arrives first: dense defenses blocking first-person view systems, or large drone swarms making traditional safe zones obsolete.